every mixed race person mental.
He's
I
done
do
some
find
fucked
that a
up
lot
shit.
of mixed race people are lot more emotional
Why are you
about.
trying to trigger me about?
You're triggered straight away. That's why you're saying why are you trying to trigger me, because you're mixed race. But I realize a lot of mixed race people.
Why are you triggered? Don't be triggered. What is mixed race? What?
Bare mixed race triggered.
What?
But I'm saying we're proper black people here. Mixed race people, I do notice they go harder for black issues than even black people. When you look at it, no joke. Because my sister, remember, I said I've got a mixed race sister, so I actually understand mixed race people and it's a mixed race brother. I grew up with them, so I know you lot are mental. So whatever you lot are saying to me, I know you lot got mental health from birth.
Who's you lot? Everyone's different, just like every black person's different.
Both of you individually mixed race are maniacs. You've got mental health. You're in therapy.
Maybe.
You need to go therapy.
I don't disagree.
You don't know mine.
Yeah, you don't know.
I know that you
her
need to go therapy. I can see in your eyes.
Most people, to be fair,
I can see in your eyes you're mental.
Therapy.
You can see she's mental.
Now, before I share my opinions on the topic, I would like to say one thing. First of all, I'm glad that a black man pointed this out, because if a black woman said this, y'all would immediately write her off. You just jealous of them biracial queens. So I'm glad that a black man pointed this out. And I would also like to point out, clearly they are not from the United States. And I appreciate the fact that wherever they live, they acknowledge that biracial people are not black. Because in the United States, you still got the vast majority of black Americans claiming that biracial people are black. So it's nice that they at least acknowledge that there is a difference and that the biracial people in this video are not like, what? I'm black too. Like, that was refreshing, okay? Oh, Lord, my whole little get up just fell off the bone. Hold up now, right? But I was finna play the intro anyway. Let me get myself together. Now, I will say this. I see what he is saying and I see where he is coming from. And I want to add my own ideas and thoughts on this topic, right? Now, let me start off by saying this, right? This is not only true of mixed people, okay? Every group of people has their issues because of who they are and what they have been through. That is a fact, right? With black people, and I'll speak specifically on black Americans because I'm black American, even though clearly, you know, the black people in that video were not, right? With black Americans, I talk all the time about epigenetics, right? And basically, epigenetic changes are changes that they don't change your genes, but they change how your genes are expressed, right? So let's just say in layman's terms, right, that every person, they come with a cookbook. And this cookbook basically gives you a bunch of recipes that make you, right? So on page 1 of my cookbook, there would be a recipe for dark skin. On page 2, a recipe for big lips, etc., 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 right? Now, epigenetic mutations do not change the recipe. So say for example, there was a pizza recipe on page 3. Say that was my kinky hair recipe or whatever. An epigenetic change is not going to change that recipe. It's not going to say, actually, we're going to change this from 1 cup of mozzarella to 2, right? But what it's going to do is it's going to tell your body to focus on certain recipes as opposed to others, right? And let me go into a little more depth so that makes sense. If your body is in a stressful situation, then it's going to say, hey, let's focus on these genes that are involved in the stress response, right? Now, take a moment to put yourself in the shoes of a black American who was alive during Jim Crow, right? Let's not even talk about slavery. Let's talk about Jim Crow. Imagine how terrifying and stressful that must have been, right? Imagine the horror of seeing somebody who looks like you be lynched and knowing you might very well be next or whatever, right? Imagine how horrific that is, right? Like, seeing somebody die is traumatizing, period. But yeah, seeing somebody die because they're the same race as you and you might very well be next, that adds a whole nother layer of trauma, right? So all of these studies have been done that show, oh, black Americans have all of these, epigenetic changes that are because of what we endured during slavery and Jim Crow, right? We were so stressed out and scared and all of this other stuff that even to this day, black Americans, we have upregulated stress responses, even though we weren't born during slavery, right? But because of what our ancestors went through, we have this, right? Now, I'm saying this because, again, I want to share that I'm not picking on biracials or anything. Everybody has, something that they're going through, right? And in fact, next I'm going to get on white people. I'm not even going to get on biracials next. Because the thing that I notice is that with all of these epigenetic studies, people only study the victims. They never study the aggressors, right? So they'll sit here and do a study on Black Americans being traumatized due to, what we endured during slavery, but they don't study what white Americans might have passed down to their folks, right? So you telling me that my ancestors were so traumatized by what white people put them through during slavery and Jim Crow, right? That they passed that trauma down to me to this day. But you tell me white people didn't pass nothing down to their kids that's alive today? That's what you're telling me? They ain't passed down none of that hatred or anger or aggression or rage or anything like that? I don't believe that for a second. Now, I have to bring up the story of Mary Turner because I think that's like one of the best examples of this, right? Mary Turner was a Black woman who was 8 months pregnant at the time. Now, for those of y'all who don't know, a pregnancy is only 9 months. So by the 8-month mark, your baby is pretty much formed, right? Would you believe that, well, first of all, lynch mob lynched her husband, her innocent husband, right? And then she spoke out against it. She said, my husband was innocent. Y'all lynched him. He didn't even do anything. So guess what they did to her? They lynched her too, right? Now, that's horrific enough, right? The lynching period. But then lynching a pregnant woman, that's even more like, yo, right? But then let me tell you what the craziest part is, okay? So these people are torturing her before they lynch her, right? And they slice her stomach open and the baby falls out and hits the ground and begins to cry. Because again, this baby is pretty much foreign, right? If you have a baby at 8 months, that's pretty much a baby, right? And do y'all think that this lynch mob said, oh my goodness, that's a baby. Oh, we need to stop. The baby's crying. Oh, take a step back, right? No, they stomped on the baby's head until it died, okay? Now, I'm sharing this story because imagine the hatred that you have to do some shit like that. And I'm tearing up, right? Because I could never do that, ever. And y'all are going to be in the comments like, oh, Flower Tower, that's our problem. We don't do them how they do us. And don't get me wrong, I'm not on that peaceful protest approach. Oh, just let white people slap you and don't slap them back. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, realistically, I could never slice a white woman's stomach open and then stomp on her baby's head until it dies. I couldn't do that. I really couldn't. That is one of the most horrific things I have ever heard, right? But this is the thing. That was commonplace. Stuff like that was not the anomaly at all, right? That happened pretty often. So I'm saying all this to say, you telling me that you had to have some serious hatred inside of you. Because again, I don't know how you could even do that. There's one person in this world that I hate. And I hope that bitch suffers. I really do. Okay, I will tell you the truth. And if I see that bitch, I might be the one to make her suffer. But if she was pregnant, realistically, I'm like, I'll save it for when you're not pregnant at least, right? I'm not finna beat your baby out of you. I just don't have that much hatred in me, right? And you got to have a lot of hatred in you to do something like that, right? But then this is the other aspect of it, right? They didn't even know Mary Turner. At least if it was somebody you knew personally who had wronged you, maybe they done something horrific to you and you like, okay, well, I'm gonna do something horrific back, right? And that's when you harmed their child. That's still out of this world. But I'm saying again, they didn't even know Mary Turner. She didn't even do nothing to them for them to do this to her, right? Do you know how much hatred and rage you have to have inside of you to just do that to a random ass person? And I'm stressing this point because there's no way you telling me that my ancestors were so traumatized watching stuff like this go down that they passed it down to me. But white people, they didn't pass nothing down to their kids when they were sitting here watching this shit, when they were having lynching parties and the white kids were just watching and smiling. You telling me they didn't pass no lack of regard for human life or lack of empathy or violence or rage or aggression, nothing down to their descendants who are alive today? That's what you're telling me. I just don't believe that. Now, it's finally time to get into this discussion of biracials, right? Because this man said, oh, yeah, mixed people are always crazy. They need therapy, so and so and so, right? I shared all that prior to this conversation because, again, my point is not to pick on biracial people or call y'all out or say y'all the only ones dealing with any sort of epigenetic anything. That's not my point. Something I say in real life all the time about people, period, is that I think everybody crazy in their own specific way. I really do. I think everybody got their own thing going on, right? I honestly do, right? and I'm going to take the same approach with this. I think every race of people got their own type of crazy that they dealing with, okay? So I talked about black people, I talked about white people. Now it's time to get into biracials. Realistically, and I'm going to speak on a biracial who is half black and half white, first of all. And I'll be specific in this case. I'm going to focus on biracials who are half black American and half white American. But then we'll, expound and, talk about other cases and stuff, right? Realistically, for a biracial person to be born with a black parent and a white parent, right? They are born with the epigenetics of that black side and of that white side, right? The same way I said black folks is passing stuff down to their kids, white folks passing stuff down to their kids. Well, clearly that applies to biracials as well. But you got the pass down from the black side and the white side, okay? So realistically, I would not be shocked if biracials had some inner turmoil. Basically, you inherited these two conflicting personalities, for lack of a better word. I can't think of a more fitting word right now, right? But your white side, they pass down this hatred and rage towards black people, this lack of empathy towards black people, etc., etc., etc. And then your black side passed down all of this distrust of white people, rightfully so, and all of this other stuff, right? And it's all just cooked up inside of you. Doesn't that sound a bit confusing? Let me put it in terms of the Avatar, okay? If y'all ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, first of all, that is my favorite show. That is not a kid's show. That show is deep, okay? But anyway, remember when Aang was attempting to learn how to earthbend, he struggled with it very much because he was born an airbender. Air is the opposite of earth, right? The same way fire is the opposite of water, right? He struggled so badly with earthbending because it went against everything that he is as an airbender, right? And in order for him to learn how to earthbend, he had to learn to think like an earthbender. He couldn't take an airbender approach, right? And I'm saying that because as a biracial person, it's like it's kind of similar, right? Because white and black are polar opposites, right? The same way airbenders and earthbenders are polar opposites, right? So when you take them and mix them up into one person, there's going to be some confusion. The same way Aang struggled to think like an earthbender, it's going to be hard for you to think like a black person or think like a white person because you have both of these things cooked up inside of you, right? Now, this is not the best explanation because, of course, Aang is the Avatar and he was meant to learn how to master all four of the elements, of course, right? So we know he learned how to earthbend in the end, okay? But my point is, though, it's that opposite thing. You got these two contrasting things cooked up inside of you, and it's like, it's just, they're constantly clashing. Now, all that being said, like I said, everybody got their own type of crazy to deal with, right? And I think the first step for biracials being able to deal with their own unique type of crazy is acknowledging that biracials are not black, which these biracials did acknowledge because, like I said, this occurred outside of America. In most places outside of America, biracials have their own category. They aren't regarded as black. I don't know why America does that, but the first thing to realize and recognize is the fact that you are not black. You are going through something that black people are not going through. And the longer that you pretend that you are just one thing or the other, the longer you're going to be confused and conflicted. You have to understand who you actually are to come to terms with your own unique struggle. And that's what I'm trying to stress. And I already know y'all finna be in the comments and making a bunch of videos responding to this. So we're just jealous about racial kings and queens. But realistically speaking, it's about time to have some introspection.